Oh,
I
well,
forgot
even
there was a little
better.
delay.
Hello, everyone, again. Thank you very much for joining us today with AccuWeather. My name is Olga Garcia, and we are celebrating weather this week, which is very exciting. We've had some very exciting things happening in the weather the past 2 weeks. So, again, my name is Olga Garcia. I work for Google Plus, and I'm here with Jesse Farrell. He is part of the AccuWeather team, and he is leading the social media efforts for AccuWeather, and we also are here with Timothy Ballasty, and he is the social media meteorologist for the Weather Channel. So I'm going to let you guys give us a brief introduction of yourselves, because I think you'll do a better job than myself. And then we're going to start talking about social media and the weather and how social media has really impacted the field of meteorology, and obviously how all of us digest weather these days. So, Jesse, why don't you start today, since it's AccuWeather's official birthday?
That's right. We are celebrating 50 years in business today, which is obviously a big, a large birthday to be celebrating, and we're very proud of that. Social media has certainly had a huge effect on what AccuWeather does in the last 5 to 10 years. And the idea of being social with weather has really always been around. It just didn't find the power to broadcast to millions until social media came about around 5 years ago.
Wonderful. Well, I'm excited to learn more about it as we dive into this conversation. Tim, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, my name is Tim Ballasty. I am, I guess you could call me a social meteorologist, the hybrid of social media and meteorology. I get to do some cool stuff. I get to explore all the latest sort of tech, social media and technology, and kind of see where everything's going and help out with the Weather Channel and try to introduce these new tools to our team, our digital content team, and see how things fly. We kind of throw it up against the wall, see if it sticks. And so that's one sort of aspect. The other aspect is engaging with our customers with Facebook and Twitter. We have a lot of people talking to us at the Weather Channel, and one of my goals is to just engage with them and answer their questions, especially weather questions. Some other questions pop up here and there that I'm not really able to answer, but especially when it pertains to weather, it's when I kind of engage with them and say thank you, thank you for your interest, and then and go on from there.
Awesome. Yeah, and I read actually that you were one of the first 2 people that actually started the Twitter and Facebook page for the Weather Channel.
Yeah, it was a very exciting time back in '09. Myself, and Renee Willett, who is now sort of the social media manager at the Weather Channel. We started back in '09. We kind of just came into work one day and we're like, we need to start doing these things. This is important. And at the time, it didn't seem that important to others, but as you know now, it's a big deal. And so I was excited to be one of the original starters of Facebook and Twitter at the Weather Channel.
That's awesome. Well, it seems that everyone on the panel here has pioneered social media for their own outlet, I suppose. So we're amongst gurus, as they say.
Yeah,
Brad,
I actually.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jesse.
I actually, a very similar story to Timothy. I started the AccuWeather and Twitter account back in 2008, I think, kind of just because it was something I was interested in, and I hoped that it would catch on, and eventually it did, and now we have a whole team of people that monitor our AccuWeather account and our Breaking Weather account on Twitter. And then as far as Facebook, 2009, I guess, was when we got on Facebook, and it's just become huge since then. And as Tim said, not everyone was convinced of the power of social media in the early days, but these days it's a standard part of the marketing budget in most companies.
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, I see that we have Brad Panovich as well joining us. Welcome back.
Thank you. I had a little plug-in issue, so I had to switch computers real quickly.
No worries. We just went through some brief introductions, and then we were going to jump into the social media and weather conversation here. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Brad.
Well, I'm the chief meteorologist at NBC Charlotte here in Charlotte, North Carolina. I've been here now 10 years in January, believe it or not, but I've been in different parts of the country. I've been in New Orleans for 4 years prior to coming here, and originally from Ohio. Worked in the Midwest for a couple years, worked in Dayton, Ohio, and in Traverse City, Michigan. So I've kind of been all over the place as far as different types of weather. As far as social media, I really started getting into it about, I would say, late 2008, 2009. We started doing Twitter pretty heavily in the election of 2008, primarily just to communicate amongst fellow employees at our station on election night. And that winter, I decided what a great tool for snowstorm. So we had a big snowstorm that February 2009. And within about, I would say, 2 or 3 hours of tweeting out snow information and updates on the storm, my follower count just went through the roof, and it just kind of took off from there. And Twitter was where it started, but obviously spread to Facebook, Google+, my blog. It's kind of just branched out all over the place, but it all really started with Twitter for me.
That's fantastic. Yeah, it seems like that's a pretty big commonality with everyone here, is that Twitter seems to have been a large stakeholder, I guess, in how social media started to impact the meteorology industry. Is that correct?
I think the thing about Twitter that makes it so well suited for weather is it's similar to text messaging. It's very short. It works great on a mobile platform. And if you're out in the elements, it's very easy to not only send but to receive information very quickly from your smartphone. It's not that you can't do it with Facebook or any other social media platform. It's just that Twitter is just very immediate and quick, and kind of when you're in the middle of a big weather event, Twitter seems to be the quickest and easiest way to send and receive information.
Right.
And on the time scale, it just I'm always going to remember February 2009. I know that it's only 3 years ago, or a little bit, almost 4 years ago, and that's a short period. But in the world of social media, it's a massive amount of time from February 2009 to now November 2012. I say February 2009 because that's when at the Weather Channel we kind of opened our eyes and we're like, wow, Facebook and Twitter. At that, just that's when things were just kind of ramping up. That was the start of it when looking back.
How about you guys at AccuWeather, Jesse? Because you guys got on a little bit earlier than 2009, is that correct?
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, I mean, the weather's always been kind of a social thing. If I could share my screen here, this is a picture of social media in 1970.
Great.
This is how we used to do it. This is actually our President Joel Myers on the left and Senior Meteorologist VP Elliot Abrams on the right. But weather's always been kind of a social thing. You could argue even that back in the late 90s, early 2000s, I had started an online organization called Weather Matrix and was attempting to kind of do social media things there. Back then, the tools just didn't exist like they do now. Back then, we did similar types of chats and sharing of photos and that sort of thing through email, just because that was all that we had. But certainly, with Twitter starting and all kind of, and then Facebook and Google Plus coming on, it's really allowed the media to spread very rapidly to just millions of people. I mean, none of us could have dreamed 10 or 20 years ago that we'd be able to both talk to and hear from millions of weather enthusiasts across the globe, and even soccer moms and other day-to-day people who are interested in the weather.
Absolutely. Well, and I think that brings up a really good point as far as the history of how social media has impacted meteorology, or I guess the weather. I'd be very curious to understand how much social media played an integral role in the earthquakes in Haiti and Chile, because I know that really, that's when people from the general public, more so than anything, started paying attention to your outlets, like really the meteorologists on social media, because people wanted to know what was going on, what was happening with their families. So I'd love to hear, Tim, why don't you tell us a little bit about how those two instances really impacted what we know today?
Wow. Okay. Well, it's when it comes to, it's funny how meteorology is bucketed into to earth science in general, but that's the way it goes. We're astronomers and we're also volcanologists, and but yeah, I think it even started before. Sorry with my earpiece here, my headphones. I think it even started before the earthquake in Haiti. In terms of, especially talking specifically at the Weather Channel, we
Okay.
started, just in terms of flash flooding emergencies in specific cities. I can recall a day, actually one of the first instances where we used social media. It was, I believe it was Louisville, Kentucky, and it was a flash flooding event in the city, and they were just getting dumped on inches and inches of rain an hour. And it was at that time that we instigated a tool called Cover It Live, which we still use to this day. And Cover It Live is cool because it ingests tweets, it ingests Facebook posts and stuff like that. And we were able to get our information out very quickly to the people of Louisville. And they just, the reaction that we got from that day, like at one point there were 16,000 people looking at this Cover It Live page at one instance. But from that point on, we realized the power of social media, and we just took it off from there. I'm sorry, no, I'm not answering your question directly about Haiti or various earthquakes, but I think for the Weather Channel specifically, that's one event that I can recall where things we just saw the power of social media.
Absolutely. How about you over there in North Carolina, Brad?
Well, it's kind of similar to what Tim says. There's always these certain events that kind of like things take off for you on social media, and we started doing very similar things to what Tim was alluding to. We used to use Cover It Live all the time for snowstorms and for severe weather events. We would stream severe weather online long before a lot of people were doing that. And one of the events that really kind of hit home, like how social media was becoming very important, was an overnight event. We get overnight severe weather in the fall and in the spring sometimes. And a lot of times people lose power. And I remember this instance, we had a derecho come through, which is a long-lived windstorm. It knocked power out to like 1 million people here in North Carolina, and it was in April, I believe, 2010 or 11. And about 2 o'clock in the morning, this thing comes through. Well, obviously, everybody wakes up. They're not watching TV, so they're not getting me through their traditional media source, which is the boob tube. They're all asleep. So they wake up to this roaring sound, thunder and lightning. Their first instinct is to go turn the TV on, obviously, but the TV doesn't work. So the next thing is to grab the smartphone off of the nightstand. And here I am sending out a live stream on their smartphone so they could see the radar, see what was going on. And I just remember we went from like a couple hundred viewers, it's 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, to when the power goes out, our viewership on the stream went up to like several thousand. And on my Twitter account, people are then chatting back and forth like, hey, I just woke up and I'm watching WX Brad on Twitter and I'm watching him on the live stream. And it kind of really started to hit me like how important this was, because my traditional source of reaching my viewers was gone the second the power went out. But with the smartphone, it opened up this whole avenue for me to still get information out to people. And probably just as important, I think a lot of times people don't realize it's a two-way street on this social media thing. The stuff coming back to me from my viewers and my followers is probably just as important as the stuff I'm sending out, because a lot of times spotters are probably the #1 tool you can have in weather. We have all this technology, but having real-time information from the ground gives you a lot of confidence to then go to your forecast or go to your radar and say, hey, now I know certain things are happening. So the give and take between the viewers becomes vitally important. And I think the average person out there who sees us sending all this information out doesn't realize how important the information coming back to us is, especially when we're doing severe weather coverage.
That's fantastic, and I think you brought up some excellent points, and I can't wait to go into all these different points of conversation. I'm very interested in understanding how mobile has started to play a bigger role in how the weather is being delivered. Because like you were saying, originally, we did tune into the TV and go to cable, and then all of a sudden, we have websites and people go online and from their laptops or their desktops. Do people actually have desktops anymore?
I go right over there.
You have a desktop.
Right
and now to their phones. I mean, we get pretty much everything on our phones, and they're tiny. So I'm curious, and Jesse, I'd love to hear from you guys, because you guys are a website. So how have you seen these different usages of, or I guess these different mediums, from the TV to the website now to the phone, impacting the way that you deliver the weather through social media?
Well, since AccuWeather is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year, just looking back through the years, in the 1960s, we mostly did weather for businesses and commercial places. In the 70s, we went to radio. In the 80s, we went to TV. In the 90s, obviously, we went to the internet. And now in the 2000s, we're doing mobile. But we still do all those things. It's just that as the new technology popped up, we tried to take advantage of it. But mobile is really getting huge here, because it's getting to the point, as you said, that people don't even have desktop computers anymore and are getting most of their information on the mobile phone. I'll give you an example, a couple of examples. In 2010, a National Weather Service official warning came out on our mobile website, and a fan of ours up in New York State was at a festival, an outdoor festival, and she saw the warning on our phone and was able to get herself and her friends to safety before the thunderstorm hit and downed a number of trees on structures up there. And that was a good example of how getting the weather out on mobile can help people and save lives and property. And not only that, but then she went to our Facebook page and told us that story. So in that case, it's a piece of like a testimonial that we wouldn't have otherwise gotten. So there's that part of it, but then there's also obviously people are posting pictures and videos from mobile devices straight onto YouTube, Google+, Facebook, and even to Twitter. So we're able to get real-time reports from these folks, which is the way that they're able to contribute to us.
Yeah, and I feel like, Brad, that was something that you started to bring up a little bit with these spotters and this real-time information coming through individuals. And I'm curious because obviously Hurricane Sandy just happened last week, and here at Google, what we noticed was that there was almost like this group of citizen reporters that were doing Hangouts on air, that were broadcasting images. I know AccuWeather and Jesse, you guys started an event where people were posting pictures and sharing their stories about what was happening in real time. So I'm really curious to hear, and Tim, I'd love to hear from the Weather Channel's perspective, how this whole citizen reporter, weather enthusiast community is really starting to grow, and how is it giving a positive impact to how you guys deliver the weather through social media, or is it impacting negatively?
Brad, you want to take it?
I'll go first.
Okay.
I think there's positives and negatives. The first of all, the positive aspect is, and these guys could speak to this, in our business, the warning system we have in place for severe weather is so good right now. The problem is that we saw this with Sandy, we see this with tornadoes. People get the warnings, but they're not taking them seriously because they can't personalize it. A big focus of our science now is the societal impacts. Like, how does our terminology and how does our warning system, impact people on a psychological, sociological level, so that when we say there's a tornado warning or there's a big storm like Sandy heading to the northeast, how do we get people to do what we want them to do, which is to seek shelter? Well, one of the ways that we have found through research, through social science, is that people like to personalize and see the threat for themselves. And one of the things that social media has done is, instead of me just going on the air and saying, hey, this threat is coming and it's some ambiguous thing, I can show pictures or video from people that are experiencing the severe weather now, and people that are in the path of the severe weather see that, and all of a sudden it hits them more than me just saying the storm is coming. If they can see visuals of a tornado, or if they can see a storm surge down the coast and it's heading their way. So those visuals and the media that's being sent to us actually can help spur people in the path of the storm into action, to go seek shelter, to go evacuate. So that's a big part of it. The negative part of it is, and we've seen this all, and it's kind of escalated tenfold, is the fake weather pictures, the fake weather reporting. We saw a lot of this with Sandy. For whatever reason, there's a whole group of people out there that want to send in fake information. The good news for
I
us
have
is
a window, a screen share for that.
perfect.
This
Oh,
is an
that's
article by
wonderful.
Huffington Post that showed a couple of the photos that people had attributed to Sandy. Now, these aren't fake photos, but they're what I call misdescribed, or basically they've assigned a new time and a date to them. One was the photo from the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, which is shown here. That's a real photo, but it wasn't taken during Hurricane Sandy. Another famous one was this, I believe this was an Instagram shot of the wall cloud approaching New York City. I saw something similar to this with the Statue of Liberty in it. This one is probably a real photo, but it's probably it was from a severe tornado warning last year. What I liked about Hurricane Sandy was the fact that this stuff was starting to show up in mainstream, if you can call it mainstream, media, at least social media. So it's not now just up to the three of us guys to try and get the word out that these photos are fake, but it's because I know that's been very frustrating. I think finally, at least social media news sites, if not cable news sites, are starting to grasp the seriousness of the problem with hoax photos and hoax reports, and hopefully the reporting is going to come a little bit better on that.
Well, I can imagine it's got to be frustrating for you guys. I mean, you've dedicated your entire lives and careers to the science of weather, and then there's these people that come out and have these bogus photos. I mean, they're cool. They look like the end of the world, but
and
not yet.
Going back to 2009 and in 2010, when social media was still sort of an infant. Well, in my eyes, it was an infant. I know MySpace and existed much longer than that. When it came to discovering and hunting and mining for weather photos after a severe weather event, be it a tornado outbreak or a blizzard or anything like that, my gosh, it was so easy to find photos, and it still is to this day. But back then, I had no problem. I find the photos, and I had high confidence that photo was going to be legit. Because, like I said, social media was still fairly much in its infancy. Today, I am a mess. I am trying to hunt and peck for photos, which again, it's very easy to come upon. However, now I have to kind of really use my weather know-how.
Yeah,
go ahead.
We've had to learn to vet things like a journalist in a newsroom would, and I'm always super disappointed when I see that there's like a well-known journalists on cable TV that can't vet this stuff either, because it's very tempting to them. I think CNN ran a fake tweet about the flood being in the stock exchange that this guy had put out there just to see if
that was a whole mess in itself. That started with NWS chat, which then got to this one person who's been identified in New York City. That was actually sending out false information on purpose, and then that blew up from that point. I was really unfortunate.
Yeah, but this kind of stuff happens, and it's part of journalism. The good news is that there are tools now that can help with this, and for anybody listening in the audience who wants to vet photos, when you see them, you see this great photo come from your friend during a storm, and all you have to do is go to images.google.com and click on the camera icon to upload the photo, or just paste in the URL to the photo, and then it'll do a trace and find similar photos, so you can tell if it's from a long time ago or something like that. Now, I don't think anything like that exists for videos yet, but if it doesn't, I'm sure it will soon. So hopefully, technology will catch up with the hoaxers soon, and it'll get pretty easy to tell this stuff apart.
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of times we're kind of the first line of defense. When I see a picture, and this happens a lot with tornadoes around here, we'll get a tornado warning, and you see 3 or 4 pictures of what we call an LP supercell, when it's an HP setup, which for us means it would be a rain-wrapped tornado. There's not going to be this perfect picture of a funnel, and you get this perfect picture, and right away, I look at it and go, whoa, that's not from today, because that's not what this storm would have looked like if there was a tornado. So we're kind of the first line of defense, but then you get some pictures that are questionable, and the reverse Google search is great. I do that quite a bit. But what happens is, we're one of many pieces in our newsroom, and if a producer gets a hold of it or somebody else gets a hold of it, they just see a great picture and they want to get it on the air right away. And they don't think about running it by one of us. So we're trying to get the rest of our staffs, at least at my station, to kind of, hey, before you put a picture on the air, run it by somebody in the weather department or run it through Google search, because nothing is more embarrassing than to put something on the air and then have to go back and say, well, sorry, that was not a current picture or a real picture. It's one of those things. It frustrates me to all ends, and I don't know why people do it, but it seems to be becoming more and more of a problem. The more high profile the event, the more bogus pictures it seems to generate.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm curious then, so that brings in a whole new element to the job that you guys do. So not only are you scientists, but now apparently you're also journalists, and I guess a bit of a detective too. So
the role of meteorologist has really changed quite a bit over the years. When I was in school in the 1990s, you didn't take any computer courses or journalist courses, and obviously now those are required. But as you pointed out, the new thing is you need to think like a news editor and be able to vet this information. And we here at AccuWeather, what we teach to our news team is we preach that timing is very important, but most of the time accuracy is more important. So take that extra minute to try to vet that photo. And I know that the three of us do a great job with that. And I think it's becoming more and more prevalent that places, major media will start to do that more and more.
So where do you see this content? So obviously I'm in marketing, so I'm very interested in where content lives. Now, do people upload it to, for example, or like hashtag the Weather Channel, or do you guys have a special album on your website where you can add images to? I mean, how do you aggregate the citizen reporter information?
Whole different, it varies, but of course at the Weather Channel we have eyewitness weather, which is great. It comes into basically a vetting process right then and there, where it actually comes into a whole sets of eyes. They look at it and then they pass it on to publish. Now that takes about 1 to 3 hours, so it's good in one sense because we actually, quote unquote, those are now our pictures because it's gone through that eyewitness weather program, so to speak. So that's good. However, like I said, that vetting process takes about 1 to 3 hours before it's published. So that's where then we have to then look elsewhere. And when I say elsewhere, I'm just looking on Twitter and I'm looking on Facebook, specifically Twitter, to hunt and peck for these photos. And you ask, what are we doing? What are we looking for? I'm using a lot of various keywords. I'm using advanced Twitter searches via geolocation, and then combine that location with a specific phrase, be it tornado or debris, destruction, icy roads, snowy roads, so you kind of just look for those specific keywords, and that's where and by the way, once you do perform that search, then you get these flood of images, and now that's when you have to use your weather eye to then discern whether that's a real photo or a fake photo, or a real photo that was then dated from previous years ago. So
That's crazy.
Now, of course, the other problem with the other dark side of social media, if you will, is not just the hoaxers, but just your typical internet trolls who try to disrupt the conversation. And that's something I've dealt with for a long time. Even back in the days of email lists, we had the internet trolls who would come in and try to change the conversation or just start screaming or whatnot. So that's the other thing. You have to have good moderation tools, especially for Facebook and Google+. And if you're going to put social media information on your website, you need to have some sort of moderation over that so that you can ban these people who don't seem to be agreeing to the rules. But that's something that we've been dealing with for a long time, and it's certainly not absent in social media and the weather.
Yeah, we obviously I'm doing a lot of the vetting and looking for images, very similar to what Tim does, and do a lot of I use Bing Maps, Google Maps, a bunch of different tools within search parameters by geolocation, keywords within Twitter. Google Plus, one of the things that's great about Google Plus is how easy it is to search for stuff on Google Plus. So there's a lot of great tools to do that. But the nice thing is now our newsrooms are expanding to the fact that we have social media producers and web people that are now starting to do some of this for me to offload some of the workload. But when it comes to weather images and weather content, we really are kind of the first and last line of defense for credibility on it. But the thing that's interesting about what we do is I think that makes the weather so maybe in tune with social media is the amount of content we provide and have on a daily basis. I have a lot of people in my newsroom who don't use social media nearly as much as I do, and they always feel like, well, what do I tweet about? What do I post about? And I said, I feel bad for them because as a meteorologist, I have weather 24/7. I have content all the time, and maybe that's why weather is so in tune with it, because everybody talks about it, cares about weather, and it happens all the time. So there's always something. Even on boring weather days, there are still great images, great things to tweet about. I mean, there's rarely a time where I don't have some great piece of content that I can send out and share or that people won't react to. And that's not the case all the time with certain news stories. Even within our newsroom, some news stories only affect a very small segment of our population or a very small subset of our population. And let's face it, sometimes it's really boring to go to a school board meeting and talk about things that only impact a few people, and maybe if you don't have kids or you don't live in that district, it doesn't matter. But if you tweet about the weather or post about the weather, every single person is impacted by the second they walk out the door. So I think I feel lucky that I have so much great content built in because I am a meteorologist.
That's a great point, actually.
Yeah, and I think that was actually one of my questions was, we've talked a lot about severe weather and the impact that social media has on severe weather, but what about those bright and sunny days that nothing really monumental is going on? How does social media impact those days where, you're just chilling out, having a picnic outside, or it's just a regular rainy day? Watch a movie inside.
Those are the days when you actually can take a deep breath and actually start engaging with your fans a little bit more, one-on-one at that point. Because on those severe weather days, my gosh, it's about content, and really pushing out life-saving information. But also, I know from my colleagues at the Weather Channel, they're actually doing a lot of creating articles and other graphics, weather graphics. So those are the days that you can take a deep breath and kind of enjoy it a little bit more. Not that I don't enjoy it, but you can see what's going on with your fans out there and see what their latest questions are, and start to just talk one-on-one with them on a more personal level, really.
Yeah, that's a great point that Brad made about the having an excuse to talk to your fans. Obviously, being in social media, we all follow some of the social media websites and blogs, and a lot of what that is geared towards is product companies. So imagine, instead of being a national company like AccuWeather or the Weather Channel and having this excuse to tell people about the weather, which is changing every day, imagine being a ketchup company. And so you have to think, what in the world am I going to post on social media today to capture my users' attention? So in some ways, we are lucky that we're not trying to sell a specific product. Being in the media is a good place to be for social media.
So I know we've talked about how y'all interact with fans, how the fans interact with you guys, but what we haven't really touched upon is how you guys interact with each other via social media. So how the media stations and the Weather Channel and AccuWeather and all these other different vehicles that deliver weather, how you guys interact amongst each other via social media. So I'd be very curious. I don't know who wants to take a first jab at that.
I follow Brad on Twitter, and then I copy everything he does.
No, it's funny because I follow as many weather people I can across the country. And the reason I do that is because, first of all, I'm a huge weather geek at heart, so I love seeing all kinds of cool weather stuff going on across the country. And sometimes I wouldn't call it stealing, but you poach stuff from other people. Like, hey, look at this great stuff that my friend in Asheville's talking about, or my friends in Portland, Oregon, or a place that has nothing to do with my local market. And this is where those nice weather days, you can tweet or post something that is cool going on somewhere else. So I love seeing what other people are posting about, so that I can, maybe share that information with my followers and my friends. The other thing is, during Sandy, you guys talked about the Hangouts, and we did a lot of these amongst my fellow meteorologists on the East Coast, where we would just get together in the evenings leading up to the storm and just talk about the storm from a meteorologist standpoint, like what's our concerns with the collaboration. And sometimes I don't think people realize this, that sometimes it's good to talk to other meteorologists about forecast thinking, and so they could raise questions about the forecast that maybe you weren't thinking about. And I love that collaboration aspect, especially in the Hangouts. We do this quite a bit. Sometimes they're limited, sometimes they're public, but I love talking to other meteorologists just so I can run my ideas and my forecast thinking across them, and they can give me feedback. So it's a great tool for collaboration when it comes to especially big storms, but also about different things going on in different parts of the country.
So it's both an internal and external too, I suppose.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was referring to, Olga, when we were talking about collective consciousness.
Yeah, please tell us more about that.
Of meteorologists and also weather enthusiasts. One of the things that Dr. Myers, AccuWeather's president, noticed when he was teaching at Penn State, which he did for 19 years, was that if you looked at the forecasts from the individual students, they could never beat the average forecasts from all the students. And that was something that he's kind of carried through our business. And I think because of that, on the operations floor behind me a couple times a day, all the meteorologists get together and have a national map discussion where they try to make sure that everybody's on the same page. And then anybody from a senior forecaster down to an intern can speak up and say, hey, did you see this computer forecast model is saying this? And that speaks to that kind of collective consciousness forming the forecast. And obviously in social media, you can do that as well, because as Brad was saying, there's too much data out there for us to consume now. It's not like the old days when there were just a couple of computer forecast models. We got thousands of tweets, thousands of blogs, thousands of posts coming at us every day, and there's no way that we, even working 24/7, could dig through that information to find what we need. So we rely on each other to maybe Brad sees something interesting and I see something completely different that is interesting, and so we pass each other's information around, and then whoever the fans are then brought the most complete story about the weather. And I know at AccuWeather sometimes when we've done blogs or Facebook posts, especially for some of our senior meteorologists, that there may be times where some high school kid has been looking at a particular computer forecast model and brings something up that could factor into our forecast if it's something that we missed, because the truth is there's just so much data out there that you wouldn't be able to process it, and social media really helps with that.
Right.
Yeah, I have 200 or more meteorologists on my Google Plus circle. I have 500 on my on a specific Twitter list. I use both of those, and by the way, collaboration is a great word. You need to be looking at what other people are doing, because sometimes you're gonna be left in the dark. And specifically, for instance, Sandy, we were so well in tune with what was going on in Sandy. Guess what? I happen to look on my Twitter list, and somebody's like, "Hey, guess what the GFS is doing next week?" And the GFS is that the U.S. Computer model, and it was bringing a nor'easter up into the same region. And so, granted, I was going to eventually see that myself at some point, but it kind of opened up my eyes a little bit, maybe 24, maybe 48 hours earlier than I would have, because I was so in tune with Sandy coverage that I didn't really look at the long-range models. So it's just one way that social media has helped me to kind of, make sure that I'm on the touch of everything that's, going on out there.
Sounds overwhelming. You guys never get to turn off, huh?
I think probably all of us are multitaskers, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably the number one question I get from people is like, when do you sleep? And it's funny. It's like I guess the thing is, weather happens 24/7. So in some ways, we kind of work 24/7. The only time you seem to ever escape, and I can't even do it, is when I'm on vacation. And even then, if there's a big weather event going on, it's just hard for me not to. And I think all of these guys can tell you the same stories. It's just we have a deep passion for what we do, and it really drives what we do online, on air, and you just can't get away from it. So if you really love what you're doing, I think weather is one of those things you got to love it, because you can have a love-hate relationship with it. It's a very fickle thing, and because it happens all the time, you got to be working all the time in some way. So it can be a hard, tough schedule, but hey, that's the way weather works, and we kind of all know we don't have banker's hours. We know what we're getting into when we got into this business.
Yep. Very true.
Well, and I think you can tell the amount of enthusiasm that you guys have, absolutely. Especially, I spend the majority of my time on Google+, but obviously I span all channels of social media, and the community is just incredible, both from the meteorologist standpoint as well as the weather enthusiast. And so I think it's going to be great, and I'd love to hear some closing thoughts on where you think social media is going to continue to take the weather industry, and what you guys see as far as the future is concerned. So I'd love to hear from everyone's perspective. Let's start with you, Tim.
Let me get my crystal ball out. It's a pretty overwhelming question, because things are evolving so quickly, as we all know,
Right.
with social media. I think, I wouldn't be surprised that, and again, this is speaking for myself, that YouTube is going to have a weather channel at some point. It's sort of everything's a lot of stuff is going towards video, and also video, making sure that video is also streaming properly on mobile and tablets and stuff like that. Get back to that question we had very, very early. A lot of stuff is going towards tablets and mobile, as we all know, and smartphones. So, but anyway, I don't know. It's a very overwhelming question. I'm not exactly sure how to best answer that, but yeah. Give me a few more minutes. Maybe I'll think of something.
Well, we're actually having a Google Hangout on the future of weather on Friday, which will not only discuss it'll not only discuss social
Friday,
media,
Tim.
but if any of you guys want to participate in that, let me know. But we're going to talk about the future of data, weather data, visualization, weather presentation, and social media. But I think, as far as I can tell right now, the big thing in social media is mobile, because everything's going more and more mobile. So we need to think of more ways to interact with our users on mobile. And obviously, there's new services popping up every day, like Google+, which is nice because it's kind of a fresh start. So you can kind of start and create your circles of friends.
It's true.
But there's all kinds of tools that are popping up, and it's hard to tell which of them are going to stick. We're active on Instagram and Pinterest as well, which seem to be the current sweethearts in social media, but that may not always be the case. And it's the only thing harder than forecasting the weather is forecasting where social media is going to go.
That is true.
The one good thing is that we know it's probably not going to go anywhere. It's probably going to, like Jesse was saying, it's probably going to develop into something different. From my standpoint, the one thing I think that's going to happen in the future, and I think since I'm a local broadcaster, I think one of the things the local broadcasters are going to have to start thinking about is something Tim alluded to, was mobile and all these different platforms, is we have to start getting into app creation. I think we're still great at content, and especially video. I don't think the video and the content that the local TV stations provide is ever going to go away. It's just the way that it's delivered is changing.
Yeah.
And I think as a local broadcaster, the one thing I would love to see us do is people more and more are cutting the cable. They're not watching satellite TV or cable TV. They're going to Roku boxes. They're using Hulu. They're using Apple TV. They're using Google TV. As a local TV station, I like to see us create apps for these platforms so that when you go to your Google TV, your Apple TV, your Roku box, there's an NBC Charlotte app that you can get my forecast and on-demand local news and weather when you want it. And then that could translate to mobile devices and tablets, because we still have great content. We've just got to rethink how we're distributing that content. And there's so many possibilities out there in distributing that. It's just not social media. There's a whole wealth of technology that would allow us to put it on our users' schedule. And that's the thing I think we ought to start thinking more about is, and probably why social media has worked so well with weather, is it works on our user's schedule. And from a TV standpoint, we got to start thinking that way. So I think in the future, you're going to see the local stations coming in on an app on your TV, and not so much by changing the channel to whatever local station you want. And the other nice thing about that is if you don't live in a market or used to live somewhere else, you could download their app and watch TV in Philly or Boston or wherever you're from and get local news. It would be kind of cool.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, especially if you travel a lot. And I think our society right now is so transient. It's like being able to access that information wherever you are in the world is just, it's incredible.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I would love to see that, because a lot of times I'm watching streams online of tornado outbreaks or severe weather. It'd be great to download a local station app from Oklahoma City and watch their live coverage on my device, instantaneously over the air signal, HD quality, instead of some of the lower quality streams that are out there right now.
It's got to be scary, though, too. I mean, even as just an individual, it's like you were saying before about being able to actually personalize the weather to whatever you're experiencing. I mean, and I know this is kind of off topic and a bit of a tangent, but I'm curious to know, how are people posting? I mean, is it more doomsday predictions now since you can actually access these things in real time? Or is it still pretty light and, informative?
Brad, I heard you tell a great story about that on one of the previous Google Hangouts. You may want to repeat that here.
Yeah, I actually talked about this earlier on our previous Hangout. Was one of the things that's happening is now that we have so much social media out there and people are seeing images and pictures of severe weather from all over the country and all over the world, people have this perception there's more of it happening. When it's not really the case. People's eyeballs are just now seeing things that happened all the time, but yet they never got to see. So in my lifetime, I never thought that there would ever be a time where every single tornado that occurs in the United States is documented somehow, either through remote sensing or through social media. Back in the 50s and 60s, there would be tornadoes that would go through a farmer's field, and the only person that knew about that tornado was the farmer and his dog. Nobody else ever knew about that tornado. That doesn't happen in 2012. If there's a tornado,
because now it's on the dog's YouTube channel probably.
Yeah. The dog is live streaming it from his collar. Exactly. I mean, it's amazing. So I think we get this perception that all this crazy weather is happening, when in reality our access to information has increased so much that we get to see all the crazy weather that we never knew existed before.
Right. It's overwhelming. I mean, I can't even imagine, what it must be like from a meteorological standpoint, being able to see how much people have access to what it is that you do on a day-to-day basis. And then have to vet that through, actually reporting the weather and everyone freaking out online because they're seeing everything happening.
I love it because I'll tell you, honestly, to see the enthusiasm, like you said, that this weather enthusiast community, I like to call them my weather geek nation, because to see these people that are just average, Joe and average Janes, they just love this stuff. And the one thing it gives me confidence is that I will always have a job, because people love talking about the weather, and I think it's great. And maybe in the future, all of this access to weather information is going to spur more meteorologists to go to school and get a degree in a heavy science and math related field. Because if one thing you can pass along to your followers is that this isn't just about being this, pretty face on TV. Not that I have one, but you could.
Oh, come on. You
I
didn't
think
just get hired for nothing.
but the thing I love about this is that I get to show the science of weather to people,
Right.
and it's really cool to see people like have that aha moment online where because I get 2 minutes and 30 seconds on TV to do the weather. Online, I have unlimited time and space to do whatever I want. I can explain why there was a severe thunderstorm today, not just tell you there was one. And it's so cool to see people get that aha moment in a comment like, oh, that makes sense. That's why we had 1-inch diameter hail, or this is why we had a tornado, or what's the difference between straight line winds and a tornado. It's great to be able to do that because then people have a better appreciation for what you do. And I'll be honest, in the long run, it makes you look more accurate if you have access to people 24 hours a day that you can update the forecast, because as we know, it changes all the time. Instead of people waiting 12 or 24 hours to get an update, I can give it to them instantly on Twitter or Facebook, and it makes you look more accurate that way. I think it's great.
Well, I think
actually
too, what happened is that people underestimate the fact that you guys are scientists, and you just assume that you guys are people pointing on a green screen, and that's not all you do, or reporting from behind the computer, as both Tim and Jesse do. But truly, at the core, you guys are scientists that just happen to have a larger voice and have a little bit more public appearance. So I think that's great, especially because oh, cool. What's that, Jesse?
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's okay.
This is a photo of our president, Dr. Myers, on the right, and Dr. Hostler, who was kind of his mentor at Penn State. And this was taken 20 or 30 years ago. But that's kind of the way that AccuWeather started out, was that we were able to give more specific forecast to, say, a ski slope or a utility than they were able to get at that time on radio and TV. Customized, real time, we would call them on the phone and that sort of thing. But back to what Brad said, one of the things that Dr. Hostler used to say was that not only did you miss tornadoes, like Brad was saying, but heck, before the satellite area, you could miss typhoons. Because our records for hurricanes and typhoons, really good records, only go back to the 1960s, because before that there weren't weather satellites, and frankly, if there was a big hurricane in the middle of the ocean, it might not even be noticed back then. But good luck to any hurricanes trying to sneak past us these days.
As long as Ghost 13 stays up there.
Well, I wanted to just kind of recap really quickly. We went through the history of social media and its impact on the weather industry. We talked about how you guys actually reach the fans, how the fans reach you, the role that spotters are playing in the new evolution of the weather distribution, and kind of what weather is going to be looking like from our crystal ball in the future using social media. I wanted to give you guys a chance to tell everyone online where to find this Weather Geek Nation for each of you guys. I know everyone has their own communities, so where to find you guys online, where to join the conversation with different meteorologists, and please, share your Twitter, your blog, whatever it is, wherever you guys are.
I'll go first. Speaking for the Weather Channel. Okay, speaking for the Weather Channel, you can find us here on Google Plus at Plus the Weather Channel. Is that the best way to say it, by the way? I've never.
You got it.
Plus the Weather Channel, and Twitter, of course, it's at Weather Channel. We also have other handles for specific events, such as tropics. It's TWC_hurricane, and of course on Facebook, we're at facebook.com/the Weather Channel. Me personally, I'm at Irish Eagle. Feel free to follow me. I talk about weather, but I also talk about Pearl Jam, my favorite band, and also Philadelphia sports, because I like to wallow in my pity of Philadelphia sports right now.
I love it.
That's funny. You can't be worse than a Cleveland fan. Come on.
No, that's true.
I've got it worse. Most everybody online knows me as WX Brad, Weather Brad, on Twitter. You can look me up on Facebook at Brad Panovich, and on Google Plus Brad Panovich. I also have a blog, WX Brad, where I blog at. And if you want to look me up at my station, it's NBC Charlotte or our First Warn Storm Team. Those are all good ways. But if you just search WX Brad, that's kind of been my my username on various platforms. And it's funny, we talked at the beginning, I'll kind of come full circle on how all this kind of started for me. I don't know if you guys remember, and Jesse probably knows, back in the day of forums, when people had bulletin boards and forums, I kind of look at that as the original social media. And back in the day, that was my username on pretty much any forum that I was on, weather-wise, that we used to run. So WX Brad's usually the best way to get me on Twitter.
Wonderful. And are you on Google Plus?
Yes, I am. Brad Panovich on Google Plus.
Awesome.
Yeah, similar story with me, as Brad was saying. Back in the days, in the old days of forums, I was Weather Matrix, and you can find me at facebook.com/weathermatrix. My Twitter username, I recently switched to @AccuWeather_Jesse, and you can find Jesse Farrell on Google Plus. And then AccuWeather, as I mentioned earlier, is @AccuWeather and @BreakingWeather on Twitter. Facebook.com/AccuWeather and plus AccuWeather on Google+. And I wanted to just give a quick reminder that we're going to have additional Hangouts this week with great topic experts like we've had today. Tomorrow is going to be about weather gadgets, setting up a home weather station. Cool. And then Wednesday is going to be the history of storm chasing. We're going to have some great storm chasers on there to talk about what they do. Thursday is the history of weather, so we're going to go back to the last 50 years of AccuWeather's history, but then also talk about when radar and satellite came into being and how they've been upgraded over the years, how numerical weather prediction works and has changed through the years. And then on Friday, again, is the future of weather hangout, where we're going to try to get some people to pontificate a little bit on what's going to happen over the next 50 years.
And that's when I'll have a better answer.
Please chime in. Put it in there.
Happy anniversary, by the way, to AccuWeather.
Yes, happy anniversary, guys.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks. I've been spending much of the last couple of weeks gathering together old photos and videos, and our news people have been writing stories. So we have, if you go to AccuWeather.com, look on the right-hand side, we have a whole section for the 50th anniversary of AccuWeather and how weather forecasting has changed in the last 50 years.
Very cool.
Fantastic. Well, thank you guys so much for joining. Again, my name is Olga Garcia, coming to you live from Google in Austin. And thank you, Tim. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Jesse. Congratulations again on 50th anniversary. And we look forward to the rest of the awesome weather week, because I think we all have good weather this week. Is that correct?
So far.
All right.
Until it gets cold.
No Frankenstorms this week.
That's right.
Well, great, guys. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you
everyone for joining live.
Thanks.
Bye now.
Thank you, Olga. Bye-bye.
Bye.